Hello, everyone, and welcome to another weekly energy forecast. So, in these sessions, we have a little look at the energy of the moon phase, the energy of the seasons, and the astrological energy of the week, and how these all layer on top of each other to create our experience of the week. So, this week is like a little bit frictiony, but not in a necessarily in a bad way. So it feels like it has the potential to surge us forward. All the planets are direct now. Um, those like new beginnings are kind of really starting to pick up pace and get off the ground. The ones we've been talking about, we've been kind of ending things, beginning things, ending things, beginning things. Things are starting to shift gear this week, and we're really gonna feel it. We're getting into third gear this week. So new beginnings are beginning to form, but we kind of want to err on the side of caution this week. It's not about going hell for leather. There's some real frictiony transits that are going to come up, starting to build this week and are going to head on into next week. And then after that, towards the end of the April, this is going to start to taper off, and then we're really, really going to get momentum going. So is this sense this week, right? When I was looking at the energy of the week, all I could think of is almost like running across hot coals where you're like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And it's like you're doing it, you're on a journey, you're here to be active. You've got to pay attention when you're running across hot coals because if you stay still for too long, you're going to get burnt. It's about being cautious. It might feel hot, it might feel a little bit tense because you're tensing, it might feel uncomfortable. But it's part of the journey. And when we get to the end, we get that feeling of exhilaration, we get the transformation, we have the full experience. So there's a lot of layers to what's happening this week, and I'm going to break it down in a second. But it is almost like erring on the side of caution because there will be friction this week, but it is for our highest good. It's always for our highest good. So it's not to avoid the friction, it's not to resist the friction, but it's just to be careful and be active in the process of, okay, what is this friction trying to teach me? Where am I being guided and where am I being called to pay attention and take responsibility? So we had a full moon on Saturday. We're kind of coming off the back of that full moon this week. So there's lots of light around. There's potential for real clarity this week. All the planets are direct now. So when we have retrograde stations, we've had Venus retrograde, we've had Mercury retrograde, and we've also had Mars, which has been direct now since the end of February, but it's just coming out of Cancer this week. So it's clearing up that pre-retrograde shadow and heading back into Leo. So there's a lot of like ends of retrograde themes happening. So retrogrades are like when we move forward, we go on a journey, we begin something, and then the retrograde is when we have to loop back over that thing. And then now we're in the pre-retrograde shadow period of all of these planets where we're now retracing our steps moving forward, having learned the lessons of whatever the thing that sent us backwards was. So that could be we didn't pay attention to the details of a contract and everything was wrong. So then we had to redo the contract and then we had to rebuild the contract. And now we're going to move forward because we've realized what the problems were. We've learned from our mistakes and we're moving on. So we're at the point where We've learned whatever lessons these periods of time were trying to teach us in a couple different areas of our charts. And now is really the time where things are going to move forward. We're in full swing of the spring season. It's the element of the wood, the wood element energy in Chinese medicine wheel, which is all about forward moving, assertive action, driving things forward. Got a little bit of Mars action this week as well. So there's just a lot of energy. Like we're coming off the back of a full moon, which is pretty charged. But we are headed towards a last quarter moon at the end of the week. So that is quite reflective. So this is a period of time where reflection could be really powerful, but there's a lot trying to move us forward as well. So I guess it's striking a balance between the two, right? Because it's not that the forward moving energy is wrong. It's not. There's a lot of energy with us now that's like changing gears, shifting momentum. Got a lot of changes in tones this week. We've got Mars changing signs, we've got Mercury changing signs, and we have the Sun changing signs, which begins Taurus season. So there's shifts happening. And there is also an element of reflection to it. So really paying attention, being very attentive. And I was literally just having a conversation with Leanne about this, who is my business partner over in a Handpicked Life, is reflection is so incredibly powerful because reflection, when we're reflecting regularly, it helps us to build consciousness and awareness. And when we have consciousness and awareness, then we have choice in how we direct our energy and where we kind of move in life. So reflective energy is so important to use and utilize to its fullest potential. And this week is going to give us an edge of that. And I'll talk about that a bit more as we move through the reading. So, we also have quite a lot of Neptune and Aries action, which is very new. So, this, like, as I mentioned before, this kind of blending of beginnings and endings is starting to shift more towards just new beginnings. The endings are wrapping up, coming to a close, particularly over the next couple of weeks, and then we really are going to be in full swing of moving forward. So this Neptune and Aries action is going to give us a flavor of how things are going to be as we move forward. And then we also have the final of the three Mars-Pluto oppositions, which has been happening over this Mars retrograde since like November, December time. This is going to be the third and final opposition that's happening. So we had the first one when Mars was direct to moving forward. We had the second one when Mars was retrograde, and now we're having the final pass. So it's ending something. It's not kicking up something new. But Mars-Pluto oppositions are pretty strong and intense. They bring a lot of like Pluto is power and transformation. Mars is agitation, irritation, action, war. It's like fighting energy. And Mars and Pluto are very similar planets in a sense. Like Pluto can sometimes be described as a higher octave of Mars. So this opposition is not going exact this week, but it's forming. And the sun moving into Taurus is activating it a little bit earlier, I would say. So it's a hot and transformational and powerful and new and gritty kind of energy that's going to be coming up this week for us to face. So I think lots of cooling is going to be helpful this week. Staying aware, using that reflective energy of the moon to really pay attention and build your consciousness. Notice what's coming up for you. What's coming up and asking to be transformed in your life, because that is really going to be the key with this Mars Pluto transit and navigating these last couple of weeks of the two biggest months of the year with as much grace and with as much impact as possible. Okay, let's get into it. So Wednesday, the 16th of April, is the first key transit of this week, and this is when Mercury re-enters Aries. So Mercury went retrograde and moved backwards. It began that retrograde journey in Aries, retrograded back into Pisces. It's moved through Pisces and it's now finishing up in its pre-retrograde shadow before it then moves on. So things are moving forward again. And we really will get a sense of this. Like Mercury in Pisces is a lot about endings, wrapping things up, and it's ending its journey on Wednesday. So this really is like when Mercury moves into Aries, things are really going to feel like a gear shift. Mercury doesn't love to be in Pisces. It doesn't have clarity in Pisces. Pisces is intangible. It's like the ocean with no limits. There's no like hardcore facts in Pisces. It's all potentials. It's all energies. It's all inspiration, that gap between birth and inception when we don't really know what it is. Like that, it's mystery, right? So Mercury is confused in Pisces. It's ending things. It can't really move forward. But as soon as Mercury moves into Aries, there's this sense of like, my mind is clear and now I can get going. So we are moving forward anyway, regardless, but the momentum will start to really feel like it's kicking off as of Wednesday. So what I would say about this is generally like the move of Mercury from Pisces to Aries is like a breath of fresh air, like, oh, I can think clearly again. This may potentially not be the case straight away because Mercury is going to move into Aries and then become conjunct Neptune straight away. And Neptune is the modern day ruler of Pisces. They have very, very similar qualities. There's this sense of confusion, intangibility, like haziness, mystery, and like Pisces is associated always with like always also with like, famous people because it's that like there's a sense of like idealization, like romanticizing who somebody is, like something being out of touch, or maybe like a figure that is idolized, maybe isn't necessarily a real reflection of who that person is. When people often say they meet famous people and it completely changes their opinion of them, right? Like that's the kind of thing that Neptune and Pisces represents. It's like that, oh, like it's amazing and wonderful and like this person's great, but it's not necessarily always real, right? So we're coming off like Mercury in Pisces. It's going to be conjunct Neptune and it's going to continue the haze for a couple more days, but it's going to be in a very, very different tone. Mercury's conjunctions to Neptune previously have all been in Pisces, which is very creative, intuitive, dreamy, um, helping like connect with like spiritual connections. It's very intangible. There's a real beauty and creativity to that conjunction. Mercury conjunct Neptune and Aries is very, very different. And it's new. We've not had Mercury conjunct Neptune in Aries for over 165 years. So we've never had this in our lifetime before. It's a very new energy. And since Neptune moved into Aries, it's the first conjunction it's making with a personal planet. So Neptune will make like multiple conjunctions. So okay, so Neptune has been in Pisces for the last 14 years. So the Sun makes a conjunction every year with Neptune. Mercury will make a conjunction every year, maybe sometimes twice a year with Neptune. Venus, something around the same. So it's not uncommon for personal planets to make conjunctions with a planet like Neptune, with an outer planet like Neptune that moves really slowly. But what is uncommon is it doing it for the first time in a new sign. So this is quite significant. And this is going to kind of give us it's going to activate this Neptune in Aries and give us like an indication of what this period of time is really going to be about for us in our personal lives, as well as in the collective, right? So it's also important to pay attention to what's happening on the world stage around this day, because it's going to re-enter Aries on the 16th of April, and then on Thursday, the 17th of April, the following day, it's going to go exactly conjunct with Neptune. But this transit is basically happening at the same time because Neptune's at 0 degrees of Aries, which is where Mercury will come into. So yeah, it's not dreamy. It's not as dreamy and creative as Neptune and Pisces is. Neptune in fire signs can inflate. It can inflame. It energizes. It illuminates. It can help. It can increase that romanticization because it's adding fire and passion to being like fantasizing and romanticizing. And then it's also like passion and idealism as well, because, but with action back to back it up, right? Because Aries is the planet, Aries is the sign that takes action and initiates, it begins things. Aries, Neptune is the planet that kind of like it helps us to have a spiritual connection. It connects us to a purpose. It connects us to a higher meaning, right? So that can also bring idealism, and that can also bring almost like this kind of deluded sense of like, this action that I'm taking is for the greater good, for example, or it's going to kind of put me, you're taking action on like an idealist perspective with passion and enthusiasm and a lot of power behind it as well. So Neptune in Aries sometimes might need to be reined in a little bit as well, because it's knowing, okay, I have this passion, I have this drive, I have this fire in my belly, but maybe let's kind of get really, really grounded before we then like leap into action. Because the saying for Aries is ready, shoot, aim. So it's almost like we're not really thinking before we're acting. And that is like, it is a good quality in Aries to an extent, because that's why it's the entrepreneur. That's why it's the warrior. Because if a warrior thought about a thought before it charged into battle, it probably wouldn't do it, right? It's that sense of like being the entrepreneur, going first, not knowing if it's going to work, but doing it anyway. So it's like that fearlessness that sometimes is needed. However, with Neptune kind of hazing and confusing things, we can maybe jump into action too soon, based on like over idealizing something. So it's just important to be mindful, particularly around the beginning of the week, of the conversations you're having, of the ideas that you have. Mercury is the planet of ideas, of the things that we're talking about. It might also spark new conversations as well, because Neptune is now activating a new area of your birth chart. So say, for example, Neptune has just moved into my fourth house of home. So for me, it might spark up a really new conversation or idea or perspective on the idea of home, family, ancestors that maybe I've never had before. So it could just bring up something new, but it's just important to just be mindful of maybe making sure you're grounded and you're not acting and diving into action straight away. Because we know that this Neptune energy can sometimes have a tendency to overinflate things, make things bigger than they are, make them seem a bit more idealistic than they actually are, right? So it's just about awareness. Okay, so I think that was all I wanted to touch on there. So Friday, the 18th of April, we then have Mars entering Leo. So we've got another tone shift this week. So we've just had Mercury move from water to fire, and we're now going to have Mars moving from another water sign to another fire sign. So This is moving from Cancer in where Mars is in its fall. It's been here for ages because we had the retrograde. So not only Mars transits through Cancer can sometimes be a bit uncomfortable and phlegmy and sticky because Mars doesn't love to be in Cancer. Generally, we only have this for a couple of months, but when we have retrogrades, he hangs out in signs for a lot longer, and it kind of prolongs a period of discomfort. It's not particularly terrible, it's just pretty uncomfortable. um, so this is going to feel like, again, another gear shift. It's like, oh, okay, moving forward, right? It's still not out of its pre-retrograde shadow. I think it was roughly about 6 degrees of Leo or something. Don't quote me on that. The Mars station retrograde. So it's at 0 degrees when it enters. It has six degrees to pass over. And then I think we're out of the pre-retrograde shadow from that point onwards. I could be wrong on that, but it'll be roughly around the beginning of Leo somewhere. Um, so it's leaving the sign of its fall, Mars entering a fire sign. It does much better in Leo. It's bold, it's action oriented, it's hot, it's fiery, and that's exactly what Mars likes to be. Um, so, but as Mars enters Leo, it is going to then start applying to that opposition with Pluto, which is at like three degrees of Aquarius or something. So even though we're going to feel like, oh, we're getting things going, there is then this sense of like, I don't want to say impending doom because I don't want to scare people because Pluto transits are very big. They're almost like tower moments, like, you know, the tower card and the tower card in tarot where like the whole tower topples over, but then we get to rebuild, right? Pluto is very much like that. It can be quite dramatic. So it can be the ending of something, but we've kind of already probably got this going, this being the third out of three Mars Pluto oppositions that's been happening with this Mars retrograde cycle that began back in December. So it's it's a little bit hot and fiery, basically. This turn shift is going to feel good because it's going to get things going. We're going to feel energized, but there is potential for big transformation, for loudness, for a bit of friction. And that's okay, right? The point of any opposition is to create tension and friction so we learn something, so we are pushed to grow in a certain way. Like friction helps us to push forward and create growth. So we've got a lot of forward moving energy this week. Use that waning full moon energy to reflect and pay attention because that's going to be so helpful. The more aware we can be around this period of time, the much more effectively we're going to be able to navigate this and being honest and grounded as well, because that Neptune is hazing things and kind of making things a little bit confusing. So the more aware we can be, and the more we can be noticing, reflecting, paying attention, the more able we're going to be able to navigate this transit with consciousness. And that really is the key here, being conscious, being aware, making conscious and intentional choices, not being reactive, because it's the reactiveness that's going to probably create the more hot and fiery, slightly more explosive manifestations of this potential transit. Um, so it might feel a little bit like retracing our steps from November, December time, Mars moving back into Leo, because it will kick up themes that it kicked up again around that time. You know, I mentioned before where we move forward, we realize something's gone wrong, we've forgotten something. The retrograde begins when we go back over whatever we need to do. And then we're in the period of time where we're moving back over. It's almost like I heard an astrologer describe it just like this actually today. She was saying it's almost like you're going out the door, you forget your keys. You realize you forget your keys, you go back to get your keys, and along the way, on the way back, you then realize that you actually forgot that you were supposed to be going to this place and you didn't realize, and now you're going to move forward in a different way, right? But you've already kind of got to that point, you're kind of annoyed, you were already here 10 minutes ago, and now we're actually moving forward. So it's that kind of thing. We're kind of at that period of time where we've gone forward, we forgot, we've gone, and now we're moving on. So we might be revisiting some stuff. There might be potential for a big change to be happening here, or for you to complete a big change. This could be completion. So something might have got kicked up around November, December time, and now we're at the culmination, we're at the end of it. Sometimes I have heard people talk about like the last pass of a retrograde being a bit more uncomfortable because it is that sense of like treading on ground that you've already been over. But it is like there's more finality to it. We're done now, right? We're moving on, but there might be some stuff you've got to wrap up to do that. And that really might be where all this charged, kind of hot, little like hopping across coals energy is kind of sending you to this week. Um, okay. Yeah, it feels like a point of transformation, which was the final note that I made there. Very, very much so. But again, it's like that tower moment. It's, things might feel a little bit, it's sometimes Pluto transit can sometimes feel a little bit destructive. So just be mindful of that. That's okay. That is a part of this process. If it feels destructive, don't resist that. It's bringing things back down so we can rebuild and build a stronger foundation to move forward off. So, if things feel a little bit like you've had a tower moment, the rug's been pulled out from under you, that's fine. Like, try not to resist that where you can. Obviously, grief is important. And if you need to grieve whatever it is that's been kind of taken away from you or, destroyed or whatever. And I don't mean grief as in like somebody dying, but, grieving a relationship, grieving a phase of life that's now come to an end, whatever. Like, even something like finding out that you're pregnant, grieving that phase of life where you had a lot more freedom and you were just you and your partner or whatever, like, that in itself is something to grieve because it's a transition, it's an ending, and then you're heading into a new beginning. So sometimes Pluto transits can kick up a bit of grief as well. So it's not that we are ignoring that, but it's more about reframing and seeing it as an opportunity to rebuild a foundation and step into a new phase of life and understand how we can move forward from this point. And all of the energy is kind of setting us up for that. The spring energy, the end of the retrogrades. We've just had eclipses, which have kind of shaken things up. The dust is settling now. We're on our way, right? Okay. So, and then on Saturday the 9th of 9th of night, ooh, then Saturday the 19th of April, that Mars in Leo is going to go on and trine Neptune and Aries. And again, none of this is separate. Mars entering Leo, this Mercury transit to Neptune, like it's all kind of happening roughly around the same time. So this energy is blending together. So this is supportive because it's in a trine. Mars is in Leo, so it's much stronger than it was when it was making those trines to Neptune when it was in Cancer. Um, it's a little hot and weird though, because we haven't had Neptune in Aries for 165 years, probably feeling a little bit alien. And Neptune and Aries are very, very different energies. Neptune, again, is that like dreaminess. Aries is hot and fiery, as I was talking about before. So it could be a moment of inspiration, a surge of action forward towards an ideal, a dream, a vision. And again, because it's a trine, what I would say is if an urge and a surge forward comes through on Saturday of like, I'm going to take action. I know this is my purpose. Like, I'm being called to do this. I'm going to take action. If that's happening on Saturday and around towards the end of the week, earlier in the week, just give it a bit of time, right? When if we can kind of create a bit of space, even if we're feeling that, if a surge forward comes on Saturday, it's much more likely to be supported because we have this nice trine happening from Mars in Leo. So, I was talking about before, like sometimes we can be a bit overly idealistic with Neptune. When Mars is coming in this trine, it's supporting action in this area of life where taking action on our dreams, taking action on our aspirations, taking action on our soul's purpose, right? So there's more supportive energy. Again, because this is a trine, there's less risk of confusion of over idealism, but it's not possible. So just remain grounded. Like, just keep grounding. Even if you're feeling that surge forward, ground yourself, check in. Is this right for me? Your human design, your strategy and authority in human design will never, ever, 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 ever lead you wrong if you follow it every step of the way. So if you're struggling to discern what feels right, as opposed to what you think you should be doing, or what is Neptune kind of confusing and hazing things and making things seem dreamier and better than they actually are, use your internal compass because that will guide you every step of the way. Guys, if you're on the membership, there's a great couple of meditations and on like navigating life with your like internal compass. There's also a great heart coherence meditation as well, which will get you into a really coherent state so you can really hear that inner guidance. And for those of you who don't know your human design, pop over to our website. We've got chart software there. It will enable you to kind of have a look at what your strategy and authority is, how you're designed to navigate life. And that will help you navigate these transits with so much more ease because you know how you are uniquely designed to make decisions and move through life. It is so incredibly helpful. So please go and check that out. Um, Okay, so, and then Sunday, the 20th of April, we've got the sun entering Taurus. So, this is moving into Taurus. It's changing signs from Aries, which is hot and fiery and active, into a much more slow, steady, consistent, gentle, soft energy of Taurus. So though this is and like a quite a soothing tone shift to some of the hot energy we've got going on, it is then as soon as it then moves into the sun moves into Taurus, it's going to then start applying to that Mars Pluto opposition and creating a T square. So not only do we have tension pulling this way and this way, we also have some tension this way as well. So it's adding a little bit to that tension. Not going exact until next week, but it's building here. It really is starting to kick off. So just be mindful of that. Um, it's It's a bit of a shift in tone. So Aries is the season which surges us forward into action and initiates the spring season. So Aries is the season of initiation. And then Taurus is almost like the energy that then continues that gives it strength to keep going. So it's not weak Taurus. It's softer. It's more gentle. It's ruled by Venus. It's very pleasure focused. It's very present, but it is not in any way weaker. It is incredibly strong. So it's much slower and softer, but way more strong and impactful. Like it's that, it's like like the power to move mountains. That's very, very Taurus energy. Um, it's ruled by Venus, and it's all about like the physical, tangible experience of the world around us. It's sensuality. It's um the taste, the smell, the feel, the touch, like that kind of thing. So it's a very much like a soothing balm after a big, loud, airy season with all of those eclipses, but it's not completely because of this Mars Pluto T square. So even though it's like a little bit of a breath of like, let's focus on the beauty, let's stop and smell the roses, all of those things, there still is a little bit of grittiness to this shift in the in season. So it's a little bit of an undertone of Taurus season, of like a relief of some of that really hot, fiery energy of Aries season. But there is still a little bit of that gritty, hot tension that's going to be building into next week. And then after that, we're going to start to feel a bit of a reprieve. And the two biggest months of the year are over, and we can take a sigh of relief. um, so, let me just check. Did I want to touch on anything else on that? Um, but yeah, I also just so we know, like this is only really active right at the beginning of Taurus season. As the sun moves forward past this Mars Pluto opposition, it is going to lessen up a little bit. So it's more like the first week or so of Taurus season is going to feel a little bit gritty, and then it's going to really soften off, and then we can really just enjoy the beautiful, soothing balm that is Taurus season. Okay. A little bit more positive towards the ends of the week. Then we've got Venus in Pisces, sextiling Uranus in Taurus. So Venus is in her exaltation in Pisces, and she is now direct. So she went direct on Sunday, the 13th of April. She's moving forward again, and she's kind of come up in her fullest glory. So Mercury came out of his retrograde at like a point where he was a little bit dampened and beaten down from the journey through the underworld. Venus has come up in her full power, and now she's going to move on and sextile Uranus in Taurus. So this is like coming up out of the underworld in her maximum power. So like going through a journey of transformation and feeling like, oh my God, like I've gone through that. This is what I've learned. I'm ready. Let's go. So this sextile from Uranus helps us to get a little bit of clarity on where we're headed next. Uranus is the future, it's breakthroughs, it's very powerful. It can be a sudden moment of understanding and like a breakthrough after a long journey where you've learned a lesson. So even though this Venus retrograde journey might have felt like going backwards, it can felt a little bit sticky and confusing at times. Venus retrogrades can sometimes go a little bit like dark because Venus kind of disappears from the sky and then reemerges. So it's very much about kind of like a little mini death and rebirth cycle. So even though Venus retrogrades can sometimes be inherently positive for some people, they can also sometimes be a little bit sticky and uncomfortable and confusing. But they're there to help us review, to learn a lesson and understand, okay, this is what I've learned, this is what I've gathered from this period of time, and now we're going to move forward. Again, knowing the area of the chart that it was hitting really, really helps. Be mindful. And if you do know the area of chart that it's been hitting, astrology can be incredibly helpful in hindsight. Often when we're in the washing machine, we can't really see the clothes getting clean, but it's when we come when we're out and we have perspective, then we can really see things clearly, right? So now is a great time to start reflecting on what that journey was all about for you. And this Uranus sextile might help you get a bit of a breakthrough moment and understand, okay, that was what it was really teaching me. Now let's move forward. And then finally, Mercury in Aries is going to sextile Pluto in Aquarius. So this is a little bit of support to that kind of spicy, tense transit that we've got building, that the sun activates earlier in the week as she moves into Taurus. So this is transformative. This could be fueled conversations that lead to action. So Pluto is power, Pluto is transformation, Mercury is conversations, ideas, and Mercury is the messenger. So this could be, that there's tension here, there's potential for transformation. It's sticky, and then this Mercury in Aries sextiles this, and it's almost like, okay, like I get it. This is what needs to happen. So this can be a little hot and a little tense because Pluto is in that opposition to Mars and it's not negating that. But this conversation, there might be a conversation on Sunday that will help. That's really what it feels like. Um, like that analogy I used before, like walking across hot coals, and once you do it, you're off. And Mercury coming into sextile Pluto there is almost like a little word of encouragement. That's the thing that's going to spur you on to the end, right? It's that kind of thing. It's just a little bit of moment of mental clarity of like, oh yeah, I forgot this is why I'm doing this. This makes sense. Okay, let's keep going, but move forward with caution. Be mindful of all this excess tension and heat this week because just take time to cool and soothe if you really need it. There is this like, ugh. So like releasing heart opening practices can be incredibly beneficial. Cooling and soothing your system, working with some water element practices create balance if you're feeling that heat and that tension. If you're feeling tension in the body, stretching, releasing, yoga sessions, like opening up. And also grounding as well. So I know that's a lot to do because they're all quite separate things, but there's just a lot happening. It's very, very dynamic this week. Um, and also utilizing that waning moon, that powerful reflective energy will be really, really beneficial over the next week, just to help you really make the most and again move through this period of time with conscious awareness and choice, not with reactivity, because that's when this energy starts to, I guess, kind of manifest in a bit more of a negative way instead of a positive way. Because there's always negative, positive, and negative manifestations of energy. Energy is neutral, even when it seems tense. It's neutral, but and it's our frequency that determines whether it's a positive manifestation or a negative manifestation, right? So the more we can show up to a situation with a high vibration, with a strong foundation, with consciousness, the more likely, the more we're on, the more able we are to direct that energy effectively. So the more you can get your system aligned and balanced, the more you can take care of yourself, the more grounded and present you can be, the more easily you're going to be able to navigate this period of time. So thank you so much for joining me. Those of you who are on the membership, I'm going to pop some journal prompts and practices to support us this week below, recommended ones from the library just to help you navigate that library a little bit more. But again, these are just recommended practices based on the astrology. Everybody responds to energy really differently. So I would really encourage you to pay attention to how you're feeling and choose the practices based on what you feel like you need. So again, it's all about creating a container for building awareness. And if you want to do that, come and join us on our live full moon group full moon coaching call tonight, sorry, where we're going to be talking about setting intentions, using it as a container for reflection and awareness so we can orchestrate the next couple of weeks through the moon cycle. So if you want a little bit of support in that way, please come and join us this evening. And we do a full moon coaching call every month, and then we also do a new moon coaching call every month, which is a little bit more of a lecture, but then we also have sharing and reflection and coaching at the end. So there's lots of resources there to support you. So if you feel like you need it, please feel free to come and join us. Members, you lean on the library this week, it will be your absolute saving grace. And yeah, we'll have a little check-in next week for that final Mars-Pluto opposition, and then that real shift in gear that comes with the end of next week in April. So lots of love. Have a wonderful week. Keep me posted. If anything is coming up in your life, I'd love to hear your stories. And yeah, we'll see you over on Instagram next week.